Today, we're going to walk through the absolutely tragic story of Dee Warner, a successful businesswoman and a mom of five, who seemed to just vanish from her Michigan farmhouse back in the spring of 2021. It's a story about a marriage that was completely falling apart, a desperate, years-long search for answers, and, in the end, a truly horrifying discovery, a discovery that proved the truth was hiding in plain sight the entire time. For 3 incredibly long years, her family never gave up hope, but the search came to an end with those chilling words, a gut-wrenching confirmation that marked the end of a mystery that had gripped a whole community, and it exposed a really dark, terrifying reality behind what looked like a picture-perfect life. 1,200 days. Let that sink in for a second. That's how long Dee Warner's body was hidden, just 4 miles from her own home. A number that isn't just about time passing. It speaks to the calculated cruelty of whoever did this to her. So how on earth did this happen? Well, to get the full story, we have to start at the end. Right, so the final chapter in the search for Dee started on August 17th, 2024. And what investigators found? Well, it was more horrific than anyone could have possibly imagined. It turned a simple piece of farm equipment into a makeshift tomb. The audacity of how she was hidden it's staggering. Police served a warrant on property that belonged to Dee's husband, Dale. And there, inside a barn, they found this big anhydrous ammonia tank. It's something normally used for fertilizer, but this one had been professionally welded shut and then completely repainted. And inside, they found Dee's remains. The medical examiner confirmed it was her, using dental records, and they ruled her death a homicide. Her killer hid her body in a place no one would ever think to look. Literally, right out in the open. Okay, so to really understand how she ended up there, we've got to rewind. We need to go all the way back to her very last day, Saturday, April 24th, 2021. That was the day Dee Warner finally decided she was done. She was leaving her husband, and that one decision, sadly, would end up sealing her fate. Dee's day was just this mix of quiet desperation and getting her ducks in a row. She went to see her older kids, and they could tell she was really, really upset, that she'd been crying for hours. She tried to keep things normal, for her youngest, even took her to a soccer game. But that night, everything just exploded. She got into a huge fight with her husband, Dale, and one of his employees about her trucking business. And then, after that fight, she made a move that probably saved her child's life. She sent her 9-year-old daughter to a friend's house for a sleepover, making sure she wouldn't be there to see what was about to happen. And this is where the fear she was living in becomes crystal clear. Just hours before she vanished, she said this to her daughter. Think about that. She was watching these true crime shows, and she wasn't just watching a story. She was seeing her own life, her own fear staring back at her. She knew. She knew what the man she married was capable of. So after the fight, after her daughter was safely out of the house, the very last message from Dee's phone was sent. And it was just a single letter. A letter that was like a blaring alarm bell to her friends and family that something was terribly, terribly wrong. Okay, so picture this. It's late, 10:24 p.m. A worried friend texts Dee, checking in on her after that big fight. And then, crickets. For almost half an hour, there's just silence. So what was the last thing ever sent from her phone? Just that, the letter K, at 10:53 p.m. Now, for you or me, a K might just be a quick, okay, but for Dee Warner, no way. This was a woman who was expressive. She was a talker. She always texted in full sentences with emojis and everything. One investigator on the case said she had literally never once just replied with a K. This was the very first piece of electronic evidence that screamed Dee was not the one holding her phone anymore. So let's look at the 2 different versions of that night. On one hand, you have Dale's story, where everything is just fine and dandy. He claimed they made up after the fight, that he gave her a massage, she fell asleep on the floor, and he gently carried her to the couch. But then you look at the evidence, and man, it tells a totally different story. Dee had already texted her son that she was done. Her friends got that bizarre, out-of-character K, and then at 2:30 in the morning, her phone just died. From the very beginning, Dale's story just didn't add up. The morning after Dee disappeared, the whole story starts to unravel, and Dale Warner's actions start to look a lot less like a worried husband and a lot more like a man desperately trying to build a cover story. The red flags just started popping up everywhere. First, Dale claims Dee just packed a bag and left, but both of her cars are still sitting right there in the driveway. Okay. Then he suddenly produces her $50,000 wedding ring, saying she left it behind, a ring her family says she never took off. He even made up some weird story about a secret phone she was using. But his most telling moves? The day after she's gone, he changes the password on the home security system, locking everyone out. And who does he call? Not a private investigator to find his missing wife. Nope. He calls a lawyer for himself. So, what was the motive here? Well, to get that, you have to understand the dynamic of their marriage. It wasn't just troubled, it was a textbook case of control, specifically financial abuse. We're talking about one person systematically taking away the other's financial independence, their ability to stand on their own 2 feet. And for Dee, this was the absolute heart of her struggle. And this financial control was the key. See, Dee was a powerhouse. She had built this amazing trucking company, DW Investments, from scratch. But investigators found out that Dale was basically siphoning everything out of it. He was moving trucks, equipment, cash, all of it, from her company into a brand new one he had created, DW Transport, one that he controlled. He was stealing her life's work right out from under her and leaving her original company buried in debt. So when she said she was filing for divorce, she wasn't just ending the marriage. She was threatening to blow the lid off his entire scheme. And look, the money thing, that was just one piece of a much bigger, much scarier pattern of abuse. He was tracking her every move. He even put a GPS device on her car. He was spying on her, asking an employee to try and clone her phone so he could read her private messages. Things had also turned violent. She once showed up to a meeting with a big goose egg on her forehead. And the most chilling part of all, she had tried to leave him before, and she told a friend, "I literally thought he could kill me." She was trapped, and she absolutely knew it. For what felt like forever, almost 3 years, it seemed like this case had gone cold. But behind the scenes, investigators and prosecutors were working, slowly and methodically putting the pieces together to finally get justice for Dee. Then, on November 21st, 2023, it happened. Dale Warner was arrested. He was charged with open murder and tampering with evidence. He, of course, pleaded not guilty and has been held without bond. Now, while the criminal case was building, Dee's family also filed a massive $100 million wrongful death lawsuit against him. That suit claims he strangled Dee in their home before hiding her body. The criminal trial is now on the books for January of 2026. Now, the prosecution's case doesn't have a single smoking gun, so to speak. It's built on a mountain of circumstantial evidence, all these different pieces that, when you put them together, paint a very clear picture. You've got the powerful financial motive. He needed to stop the divorce to hide his embezzlement. You have the long-documented history of control and abuse. You have his incredibly suspicious behavior right after she vanished. And then you have the final grim centerpiece of it all, the discovery of Dee's body, hidden on his property. It all points to a cold, calculated act. Dee Warner's story is just a heartbreaking reminder of the dangers that can hide behind closed doors. She saw the red flags. She told people she was scared. She was actively planning her escape, and still, she couldn't get out in time. Her case really forces us to ask a tough question, doesn't it? In our own lives, in our own communities, how many warning signs do we all miss before it's too late?